Mel Gibson finally speaks out about Val Kilmer at 70. Mel Gerard Gibson was born on March 3, 1956, in Peekskill, New York. He was the sixth of 11 children in a big Irish Catholic family. His formative years were influenced by a home rich in faith, tradition, and robust convictions, things that would eventually have an effect on his public life and artistic choices, often in a way that caused controversy. The Gibson family moved to Sydney, Australia, in 1968, when Mel was 12. This was because Mel's father won a lawsuit against a railway corporation and wanted to get away from the chaos of American culture during the Vietnam War. That decision changed Gibson's perception of the world and set the foundation for one of the most unlikely and important acting careers of the late 20th century. Gibson went to the National Institute of Dramatic Art NIDA in Australia, which is one of the best acting schools in the country. He didn't want to act at first, but he auditioned to help a friend. Gibson's raw passion, emotional candor, and compelling screen presence rapidly set him apart from his colleagues. After he graduated, he got a job in theater and low-budget movies. He became known for being able to show both vulnerability and explosive emotion. George Miller's Mad Max, which came out in 1979, was his big break. The movie was made on a small budget, yet it became a huge hit around the world and made Gibson a global star virtually overnight. His performance as Max Rokitansky, a stoic, tormented anti-hero trying to survive in a world falling apart, changed the action genre and made Gibson a leading man who could handle both physical violence and emotional depth. Mad Max and its sequels, Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior 1981, and Mad Max, Beyond Thunderdome 1985, made Gibson's reputation as a powerful screen presence even stronger. At the same time, he showed how versatile he was by playing quite distinct parts. He gave a really touching performance as a young Australian soldier in Gallipoli 1981. This showed a sensitivity that was far different from his action hero persona. This balance between being aggressive and being soft became a trademark of his career, making it easy for him to switch between genres. Gibson immediately went to Hollywood, where he had a lot of success in American films. He became one of the most bankable stars in the world in the 1980s and 1990 Seconds. Movies like The Year of Living Dangerously 1982, The Bounty 1984, and Tequila Sunrise 1988 showed off his acting skills. The Lethal Weapons trilogy 1987 to 1998 made him a pop cultural icon. Gibson gave the action comedy formula real emotional weight as Martin Riggs, a smart but self-destructive cop dealing with pain and loss. People loved the part because it showed off his unique ability to combine humor, pain, and unpredictability into one unforgettable figure. Gibson started to show himself as an ambitious and brave director during the height of his acting fame. Braveheart, an epic historical drama about Scottish freedom fighter William Wallace, was directed and starred in by him in 1995. The movie was a big hit with both critics and audiences, earning 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director for Gibson. Braveheart showed Gibson's talent for presenting big stories, using powerful images, and making people feel strong emotions. It also signaled his transition from a movie celebrity to a major cinematic force. Even though the movie was not historically accurate, it had a lasting cultural impact that showed how Gibson could delve into universal themes of sacrifice, independence, and moral conviction. Gibson's decisions as a director become bolder and less traditional. He made The Passion of the Christ in 2004. It was a brutal and controversial movie about the last hours of Jesus Christ, filmed in Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew. Not many people thought the project would work, yet it turned out to be one of the highest-grossing R-rated pictures of all time. The movie sparked a lot of debate throughout the world. Some people liked it for how spiritual it was, while others didn't like it for how violent it was and what they thought it meant ideologically. And no matter what you think, it showed that Gibson was willing to take big artistic and financial risks to follow his own goals. Gibson directed Apocalypto in 2006. It was a grandiose epic with little dialogue set in the ancient Maya civilization. The movie was praised for its technical skill, fast pace, and ability to make the audience feel like they were in the world. It showed Gibson's interest in basic human problems, survival, faith, and the fall of civilizations. Just like the Passion of the Christ, recurring themes that characterize his directorial work, Gibson has had a lot of success in his career, but his personal life and public image have been very controversial. Starting in the middle of the 2000s, a slew of highly publicized events involving alcohol addiction, provocative comments, and legal problems severely hurt his reputation and caused him to be shunned in Hollywood. These events had a big impact on his career and led to hard talks on taking responsibility, forgiving others, and separating the artist from the art. For a long time, Gibson wasn't really active in making mainstream films. His past successes were eclipsed by his personal problems. But after a while, Gibson slowly and carefully came back. He played supporting roles in films like Edge of Darkness 2010, Get the Gringo 2012, and Hacksaw Ridge 2016. He directed the second one, which was about the amazing true story of Desmond Doss, a World War II conscientious objector who worked as a physician. Hacksaw Ridge had a lot of good reviews and was nominated for several Academy Awards, including another Best Director award for Gibson. The movie was a sign of his professional redemption and reminded everyone of how great he was at directing. Mel Gibson is still one of the most complicated and divisive people in modern cinema, both as an actor and a director. His career has been full of amazing successes, creative risks, and very human failings. Few performers have so fully represented the paradoxes of fame, charm, and instability, artistry and excess, conviction and controversy. But his impact on movies, especially in changing the way action heroes are portrayed, bringing back historical epics, and stretching the limits of popular filmmaking is clear. Over the years, Mel Gibson's personal life has followed the same dramatic arcs as his film career, with commitment, turmoil, regeneration, and strong family ties. He married Robin Denise Moore, a dental nurse, on June 7, 1980, in a traditional Roman Catholic ceremony in Forestville, New South Wales. This was the start of his longest and most important relationship. At that time, Gibson was still becoming famous, and Robin was there for him as he went from being a young Australian actor with big dreams to one of the most famous people in the world. During their 26 years of marriage, the couple had a big family with 1 daughter and 6 sons. For a long time, people thought their partnership was quite stable, even though the sector is known for having short-lived unions based on shared faith, family values, and a somewhat secluded home life. Even though Gibson was getting more and more famous, the marriage ended after more than 25 years. In 2006, Gibson and Moore broke up, which marked the end of a significant time in his life. In 2011, their divorce was official. It got a lot of attention from the public because it was so emotional and so big financially. Even though the breakup was very public, Robin was still a big part of Gibson's life. She was his ex-wife and the mother of 7 of his children, and he has stayed close to her through his family. Gibson started dating Russian singer and pianist Oksana Grigorova in 2009. The relationship got serious very quickly, and later that year, the couple had a daughter named Lucia. For a while, the arrival of Lucia gave Gibson a chance to start over as a father, but the partnership didn't last long and was full with problems. Gibson and Grigorova broke up in 2010, and their breakup got a lot of attention from the media and the courts. Gibson stayed in touch with his daughter through it all, adding another chapter to his complicated family tale. A few years later, Gibson found stability and a new friend in Rosalind Ross, a former champion equestrian and writer. Gibson started dating the two in 2014, and their relationship marked a quieter, more stable time in his personal life. In 2017, they had a baby named Lars Gerard, which made Gibson's already big family even bigger. Ross is much younger than Gibson, and people have often said that he is a soothing influence. Compared to Gibson's previous romances, their connection has mostly stayed out of the tabloids. Mel Gibson has 9 kids in all. His oldest daughter, Hannah Mae Brosted, is from a previous relationship, while the rest of his kids are from his later relationships. Gibson has often talked about how important fatherhood and family are to him, even though he has had a lot of problems and issues in his life. He has called his children his greatest legacy. His personal path, which included a long-term engagement, a traumatic breakup, and then a rebirth, lends a deeply human element to the public picture of a man whose life, like his films, has been full of intensity, struggle, and moments of redemption. Mel Gibson is 70 years old and has reached a point in his life where it's easier to think about things than to hold back. Gibson is known for being quite intense on screen and keeping his personal life private. He hasn't said much about his fellow performers, but when he talks about Val Kilmer, his voice gets softer and his words become more measured, thoughtful, and intimate. Gibson has now decided to talk about the man he used to work with and admire from afar after years of not saying anything. Not as a famous person from Hollywood, but as a person who has been sculpted by talent, hardship, and strength. Val was never simply another actor to me. Gibson believes he was one of those unusual people who could shift the temperature of a room just by walking in. Gibson remembers Kilmer as very smart, unpredictable in a good way, and completely dedicated to his work. Gibson said that Kilmer had a depth that went beyond just how well he could act. He didn't act like other people, he lived in them. People sometimes felt uncomfortable when that happened, but that's usually a sign that someone is telling the truth. Gibson says that Kilmer's reputation in Hollywood was often wrong. Gibson saw something different in him, even though some people called him hard or intense. When people don't get someone, they like to make them seem simple, he says. Yes, Val was complicated, but he was also very curious, spiritual, and driven by a yearning to make something real. Gibson says that Kilmer's intensity stemmed from caring too much, not too little. He wasn't after fame, he was after purpose. Gibson says that the news affected him hard when Kilmer's health problems became public, especially when he fought throat cancer. It was terrible in a manner that is hard to explain to see Val lose his voice. Gibson says in a low voice, his voice was a very strong tool. It had power, weakness, and humor. It takes a lot of guts to see him change and keep going. Gibson stresses that Kilmer never gave in to self-pity. He learned new ways to say what he wanted to say. That is what makes a real artist. Gibson speaks with humility and thankfulness now that he has lived for 7 decades. He thinks, time takes away ego. All that's left is respect for the people who came, even though it cost them something. Gibson sees Kilmer as a reflection of his own problems with fame, scandal, and how people judge him. We've both been misunderstood at times, which makes us feel close to each other even if we don't communicate every day. Gibson also talks about Kilmer's legacy in a touching way. He thinks that the effort will still be there long after the headlines pass, and Val's work will last. He provided people something real and brave. You can't pretend to be that. Gibson thinks that Kilmer is a good example of a group of performers that aren't afraid to take risks, even if it means making people mad. He told us that art shouldn't be easy to deal with. In the end, Gibson gives us basic but strong recognition. He says he admires Val Kilmer for his talent, his enthusiasm, and the way he dealt with problems without losing who he was. That's the most important thing to me right now. At 70, Mel Gibson's statements sound less like a discovery and more like a wake-up call. A simple tribute to a fellow artist who had a lasting impression on both films and the people who really knew him.